We are extraordinarily fortunate to have our next speaker with us. It's a very rare occasion when this information breaks into the political mainstream. And this gentleman was brave enough to initiate a debate in the Japanese House of Councillors, which is the equivalent of Australia's Parliament and our Congress. And he has traveled a long way to share his story with us. Please welcome a member of the Japanese House of Councillors and a member of the Democratic Party of Japan, Yukihisa Fujita. Please show him our appreciation.
I have some light somewhere here. I have a small note, I have made some notes from which I would like to speak.
Slides up.
Yes? Is it working?
Lights.
Yes. I'd like to see, yes. Thank you. It's a great honor for me to be able to speak to you this afternoon. Thanks for the invitation, John and others. I have a personal, very important sort of life event in Australia. That was, I met my wife for the first time in Australia about 30 years ago. She does not happen to be an Australian, but happens to be a Japanese. So we've been married for the last 26 years by now. I was very moved by the apology by a Prime Minister, Mr. Rudd, last month, because I remember visiting a settlement or reservation, you may call, of the Aborigines in Queensland with Senator Bonney some 20, 30 years ago in Queensland. And I had a personal friendship with Senior Kim Beazley, the late father Kim Beazley, who passed away last year, the father of the former leader of the opposition. And I remember Kim Beazley Senior telling us about the education reform as education minister he conducted for Aborigine children about 30 years ago. So these things make me want to come to Australia. In addition, the last time I was in this city was when I was invited to talk about anti-personnel landmines. And it was 1997. And in that year, the Ottawa Treaty was signed in Canada. So these things make me very moved to come to this conference this afternoon. Now, my involvement with 9/11 goes back to the year 2002, I think. The chief of my small township in Tokyo said, you know, these days, the USA makes use of high-tech warfare, that you do not have to kill many soldiers, American soldiers, he meant. And by very few casualties, you are able to win the war in Afghanistan. But he said afterwards that, you know, the life price, or price of the lives of Afghanistan people seems to be much, much cheaper than those of the US people. And I was very moved by it. Then in September 2002, well, a few months before actually, I had been asked by a Japanese non-governmental organization to help them find a good project in Afghanistan. And this group actually held a charity concert for those victims of 9/11. But the fact was that they did this charity concert for the victims of the 9/11s, but not for those who were killed in New York. But they wanted to help some projects in Afghanistan. So eventually, I was able to arrange for them to build a school in Bamiyan in Afghanistan. You remember Bamiyan was where a big Buddha statue had been destroyed, where the minority people are living in a bad condition. So I was very moved by the fact that very simple, humble Japanese citizens have good smell or good sense of who were the real victims of the 9/11s. Therefore, they built this school for the children in Afghanistan. And these sort of things made me, of course, be interested in what happened in 9/11s. But I was very ignorant about what was happening. And a few years later, that I began to know that the holes in the Pentagon were much smaller than, they should be. But I didn't sort of take these things so seriously. Until a few years later, I was given a film by a Japanese woman called Yumi Kikuchi, a good friend of Chihaya's, The Plain Sight, Japanese version. And I began to be more serious. But in between various things in politics and in non-governmental organization, I didn't take them up even seriously. Then, I think 2 years ago, I was given more information, including some various allegations which are portrayed in these Patriots questions. And that made me more serious. Now, the important thing about this Patriots question is that you cannot deny those facts. I mean, I've been very moved by various presentations this morning and just now. But the thing is that politically, I think as Professor says, NIST people knows that, what they are reporting was not out of their conscience. But politically, it's very difficult to prove that they were wrong. But what was said in public on different media, newspapers and so on, you can't deny. And from this fact, I formulated the questions to the Prime Minister and the other cabinet ministers in January. I was very moved by the fact that a person like Professor Griffin, a theologian, didn't have anything to do with politics. Very meticulous, thorough investigation a person like him conducted. I was also interested in Ernst Welteke, the chairman of Central Bank of Germany. And he said at the conference of finance ministers and governors of central banks of Europe in September 2001 to say that there had been strong evidences of put options and high oil prices and some interventions of gold market and insurance corporations. For some cabinet minister or politician to say something can be debated, but the governor of Central Bank of Germany to say such a thing at the conference of central governors meeting can not be sort of debated about.